Alright, if you go to today's Moodle page, I've updated the next project that we're working on. You can download the information. The unit exercises is where you'll find the information for today. And you do need to download the BioBox zip drive that we have. And that'll be our project. Once you open up the zip, here's the information that's inside of it. I'm giving you four different pictures of motorcycles. And I'm also giving you the information about each motorcycle. Pay attention to the name of each one. So the name, there's the CBO breakout, the 48 Softail. Here's the information that goes along with each one of them. Essentially what we're going to be making is a very simple 4-panel brochure. It's not going to really fold or anything, but each panel will be built a certain way and have a certain style that I'm looking for. What I want you to do is we're going to build this in Indesign, but we're going to do some editing in Photoshop. In InDesign, this is how we're going to lay out our document. I want to have 4 pages side by side, and they're not a common size page. If I open up my Pages palette, you can actually see it's 4 different pages, 1, 2, 3, and 4, all side by side here. So to set this up, here's how we're going to do it. If we go to File and New, make a new document. Of course, it's going to have 4 pages. We're not going to worry about facing pages since it's going to be not in book form. What's the size? 5 by 10. 5 inches wide, 10 inches tall. And the columns, margins will be 1/4 of an inch on all sides. We won't worry about bleed and slug for this one. When I say OK, you can see in my Pages panel, this is how it's set up. By default, they'll put them all in a stacking order, and that's what we're used to. What I want to do is to be able to drag these next to the other one. But if I do this, it's not necessarily going to stick. What I need to do is to tell InDesign to let my pages shuffle. At the very top right-hand corner of your Pages palette, we do Allow Document Pages to Shuffle. With that unchecked, now I can click and drag, and you can see the little bracket will light up, and I can put 2 pages side by side. If I do it out here and I let go, it's not going to stick. So make sure you see the bracket each time you set up those particular pages. That's what I'm looking for. That's the way I want it to go. All clear on that? That's the easy part. Next part, let's load in some of the images. Like I said, we've got bio boxes, and each one is going to have a different picture that goes along with it. I'm going to start with this one. This will be an easy one. So the 48. As far as the layout and design goes, I'm going to leave a lot of it up to you. You've got 4 different motorcycles and you've got 4 different panels. So 1 motorcycle per panel. Don't try to do all of them across the 4-page spread. 1 bit of information for each. So we'll start with this first one. I'll drop in my picture. Make sure it's selected. Cancel. And yeah. We'll place it in here and, of course, resize it to fit. What I want to do is, like in the example that I showed you in the book for the bio box, where it has a circle cutout and then you had like the head of the rhino was peeking out of the circle. I want to show you how to do that using your clipping path. This isn't something that we do very often, but it's something that InDesign does very well, and you got to do it through Photoshop. I'm going to open this picture in Photoshop and edit it. Remember, you can select it, Control, click. We're going to edit with Photoshop, upgrade. All right, and so here's the picture that we can work with. To do this, since we're working with clipping paths, we're going to make a path of vector drawing around it. I do need to have my Paths palette open, so here's this here. Right now there's nothing there. And the tools we're going to use are vector tools located at the bottom of your toolbox. The first one I'll select is our Ellipse Tool. When you select whatever shape that you want to use, make sure you're working in path mode, not in shape mode. If you create a shape and you see that it's filled in with something, you're working in the wrong mode. I'll undo that. With path mode, this time if I click and drag and make a shape, it doesn't fill in. Instead, it just gives me a regular working path that I can work with. So as I click and drag, what I'm looking for is for part of the front end, we'll say right about there. If I zoomed in, you can see how part of this wheel is sticking out of my main circle area. Does that make sense? What I'm going to do is I'm going to clip it inside of this circle, and then I need to draw off the rest of it as it goes out of it. Here's how to do that. I've got my circle. I'm going to grab my pen tool, and with my pen selected, again, we're still working in path mode. I'm also going to make sure we're working in combined shapes mode. If you don't have combined shapes, it's actually going to start erasing away from whatever you draw. So keeping it with combine, I'm going to draw off this rest of the piece that's missing. And I only need to draw off the part that's sticking out, so I'm not going to worry about the extra bits. Very quickly. The pen tool in Photoshop works similar to Illustrator, but it doesn't have the same amount of controls. So you can always go back later and fix it. Again, there it is crossing there, so I'm just going to connect this back to my starting point up here. Check out my pass palette. You see how there's the circle, it's got the little extra bit connected onto it? That's what you're looking for. That's what you want to see. If I need to make any changes to this, I can use my path selection tools. These are different from your regular selector up here, your black arrow. Make sure you're using your vector selection tools. You can click on your individual paths and move them around, or you can use your direct selection tool and clean up a specific area from here. Actually, mine looks pretty good from here. The last thing we want to do is to merge. I've got one drawing of my circle and one drawing of the wheel. To merge them, you can go back up to where you chose to combine, choose merge. You'll say yes. And now you can see both of them are one together in one solid object. Did I lose anybody? Real simple. So I've done it for this one particular path. If I zoom out, I know it's really small to see, but you can see the circle. Now it's got the front wheel. Here's what part of the magic trick. I need to rename working path. Double click on it, give it any name. You can keep it as path 1, you can call it cycle 1, call it 48. Whatever you have, it's been renamed. A JPEG will save your path's information within it. So if I just go ahead and save this information, file and save, we'll keep it at maximum size, say OK. I can actually go back into Indesign and it will update my photograph since I've pulled it up from Indesign. Now, when I select it, I can go to my Objects Clipping Path, and one of the paths that I can choose is a Photoshop path. And there's the cycle path that I have. You can see it's clipped out. It's actually masked around this way. Got preview turned on so I can see it. You can have multiple paths saved on the same Photoshop path, so if I had different details that I wanted to show. But for this one, I only just need one. We'll say OK to that. All right. So I've got my photo placed up in here. I would do the same or something similar to each of the photographs that you have for the other four or the other three motorcycles. One thing I'm going to allow you to do, it doesn't have to be a circle. If you want to use another shape, if you want to just clip out the motorcycle, or if you want to use a square or some other kind of path, if you go into Photoshop, let's see, I'll open this one back up. Photoshop, see I said. Rather than choosing the Ellipse Tool, you've got your Polygon tool, you've got some custom shapes. When you choose a custom shape, up here at the very top, there's some other predefined shapes you can play around with and work with. Some of them obviously won't work as well. But I'm going to leave it up to you. You don't have to have an ellipse as your main shape. For the rest of it, it's up to you how you want to format the look and feel of the text. And so this is where I'll kind of sit back and let y'all watch how I would do it. So I'm working on the 48. We'll open up the 48 info. There it is. And we need to copy and paste over everything. What I like to do is put everything in its own text box by itself. So bear with me as I draw. There we go. Starting price gets its own thing. Dimensions get their thing. Performance gets their own thing. And a little blurb down here gets its own thing. If I'm a designer and I'm looking at all this information, what's the most important bit? What needs to be Papa Bear of all of this?
The name.
The name. Why the name?
So they know what it is they're looking at.
Yeah. It's the main label. It's the main drawing card for this particular photo. So if it's going to be Papa Bear, it obviously needs to be more weighty, it needs to be larger, it needs to be bolder, something that will make it stand out. Play around with fonts. Let's see, we're all ages. This one doesn't have all of them. Space is still missing. Let's get something fun though, go along with it. That was not bad. So 48, nice and bold. What needs to be Mama Bear? I've got the price, I've got the dimensions and the performance, I've got a little blurb. Dimensions and performance. Anybody say something else?
I'll send the blurb.
The blurb?
I think it's kind of...
The price? The truth of the matter is, Mama Bear can be anything. The price, if it was the price, that would be something somebody's interested in purchasing it. That's probably what I would want to see. If I'm interested in collecting motorcycles and I just want to know the differences, this is where the performance and the dimensions would be most interesting. If I'm interested in how people feel about it, maybe the blurb needs to be larger, needs to stand out more. So any little bit of that could be Mama Bear. I'm just going to stick with the price. If I wanted the price to be more emphasized, definitely not as big as 48. I could make it larger. It doesn't have to be on the same line. Play around with your placement of the text. Let's see, let's change it up to, let's do Abner book. Maybe make that nice and bold. There we go. You as a designer can make these kinds of changes. It's up to you to make sure it reads really well. Let's bring it in a little bit closer. Too close. Same way for the dimensions. Maybe dimensions I can match this particular font. So I'm using Abner. Let's do book. Abner book 18. Let's do performance is the same thing. You awake on me, Matt?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Let's see.
I'm very hard. I did not eat coffee this
From here, I can just play around with the placement of things. Once I've got an idea of size and weight, I don't have to even keep these the same size. If I wanted to make this a lot smaller, as long as it fills the area and feels good, it will actually work out. Maybe both of these can be a little bit smaller to make them fit. The next thing I like to play around with is colors. Where can I get color choices from? Let's do a background color first. Use the image, yeah. Got my color picker, I can click on the image, and it'll automatically give me a selection of colors, bright, colorful, dark, pulled from that one. Let's use the bright colors. Got it. Click here to add it to my swatches. Let's actually open up my color swatches. There they are, right here. So if I wanted to give it a background, I've got a text box that's behind it. Let's use some of my new bright theme color swatches. Oops. Ooh. Let's give it a dark background. That looks good. Could apply some of the colors to my font. Very, very easy. Meh. Let's keep that white. At this point, literally all I'm doing is playing around with the look and feel of everything. If the size of it works, then this will work. I'm not necessarily satisfied with it. Other things you can do is you can play around with maybe the dimensions of it, or excuse me, the orientation of things. That's a little too close to there. So now I can even move starting price up here. I can, hey, there we go. That's starting to fit really well. I can move that down there. I can have the starting price off by itself. I can have this take up a lot more room by adjusting my leading. Other things I can do are play around with not necessarily the color, but can I add texture or can I add any type of special effects to this? Ooh, that would look cool. See how you got kind of that almost transparent background to it? Oh, let's get crazy. Let's try something. Let's get wild. No, Mr. Ivy, no. Tell you what, I'm going to make a copy of my picture, and I'm going to paste it right in place, right on top of the other one. But for this one, I'm going to turn off my, my clipping path. If I send this picture to the background, let's actually make sure I got it selected, send it all the way to the back, so it's underneath this picture, I can pull in some of the colors to my background color. I can do this by if I open up my transparency palette. Fastest way to find it is under your effects, transparency, change your blending mode. Multiply, screen, hey, multiply actually works pretty good. Maybe color, hue, set, color's not going to do anything. Screen will make it lighter. Darken. I like multiply, that turned out pretty good. So now, I've got more of a special effect that I can work with it. Did I lose anybody on that? Essentially what I did was I just made a copy of it and now that's in the background. That's part of my layout. Other things I can do, I can maybe add some decorative borders to the back of this, and I can use the colors that I created. If I don't like these colors, I can always choose others or more. So maybe 48 could be our darker color. Now I've got a sense of overlapping. Even this little panel here is overlapping the picture just a bit. Move things in, move things around. Starting price is getting crowded out, so maybe I'll make this a little bit bigger. And I can place the price down here. Ooh, let's have it wrap around. See how easy graphic design can be? All I've done just to create this is dealt with my hierarchy, what needs to be largest, what needs to be mama bear, what needs to be baby bear. I've dealt with the color scheme, and I didn't have to choose any colors. I just used the colors that were a part of the image that I'm working with. And then I dealt with the placement of things, making sure things are lined up with each other, making sure things are easily read. And that's it. That's 90% of my fight. After this, it's just going around and tweaking small things. Can I make things a little bit smaller? Can I change up the placement of stuff? I'm not saying this is the best layout for this, but it's a layout that I was able to quickly sketch out in just a matter of minutes. If I'm going to do the same thing for each of the panels, it's simply a matter of copying over whatever I have. Actually, I'm going to change up the width of this one. So if I've got all of this in one panel, come on, hold down Option, and I can make a copy of it to this one. What would I need to change if I did the next one on here?
Probably photograph and the color scheme.
Definitely change the photograph, yeah. Change the color scheme to match it up. You could potentially change out some of the placement of things. Maybe if something's up top here, maybe you can bring the picture down here and the information up top. But as long as they have the same look and feel, it's not too dramatic, then the whole thing will be nice and consistent. Here's the one that I did earlier this morning. Again, I worked just as fast to get this particular layout as I did with the other one. All the different colors that I chose came from the pictures. All of the layout, it looks exactly the same. All of the placement of things. You can even see how I changed up the different clipping mask outside of this one. So I used a polygon, a custom shape, and a little custom drawn triangle shape for back there. This is what I'm looking for. You can play around. I've seen some very creative looking little bits for how people lay these out. Think about some of your alternate grid forms. Can you incorporate, in this case I'm doing more of a planar type of grid. Could you incorporate an angled grid? Could you incorporate more of a modified column grid? Those kinds of stuff. But do make sure everything fits nice and well inside of that. Once you're finished, Let's go back to our, there we go, normal mode. Once you're finished, you're going to save this as a PDF. I'll choose smallest file size. The PDF itself will save each of these pages on their own. So if I exported it, I know it's missing links. Give it just a second. There it is. You can see the PDF. Here's all one page. Everything has its own page by itself. They're not side by side. Cool? Okay. I'm going to turn it over to y'all and let y'all get started. If you have any questions, just let me know.